to say in bringing us up to speed on what's going on in Columbus. And as they put it to me, this is a really big deal. They're not sure what took so long for it to happen, but everybody in Columbus has their eye right now on what's happening with these three districts. So I know Mr. Nathan Manning is here, and we gotta have Mr. Joe Miller here, and I'm going to give each of them just 4 or 5 minutes to come to the mic, 3 minutes to come to the microphone. And just have to say hello, give us a quick update from there. Come on, Nathan.
I guess I go first. Thanks.
Yes, sir. Come on up. And Teresa should be here very shortly. Yes, sir.
Well, thank you. I didn't prepare a 4 or 5 minute speech. It's only a 30-minute speech, so bear with me. Just kidding. Bad joke for this early in the morning on Saturday. But I'm Nathan Manning, State Center for 13th District, which covers all Marion County and all Marion County, so obviously Marion City Schools. Unfortunately, House Bill 70 passed while I was in the legislature. I did vote against it, thankfully. And we're kind of seeing why a lot of us were not supportive of House Bill 70 at the beginning. Unfortunately, with Youngstown, East Cleveland, Marion Schools, it's clearly not working, and that's what we're hearing a ton in Columbus. We're hearing all the right things. I would think Representative Miller will say the same thing on both sides of the aisle. Excuse me. So I think what's there, 3 bills out there.
3 above the line, probably.
Yeah.
Not the black line, but above the water, and a couple that are staring below.
Yeah. So there's 2 definite bills out there in the House. There's one in the Senate that I'm carrying, House Bill or Senate Bill 110. It's had 3 hearings. There's no opposition yet. It's going very well. I'm very optimistic that we'll get something done in the budget. What that is, I'm not really sure yet. But there's a lot of people at the table, thankfully, unlike how House Bill 70 was done. So I do think we'll get something done. My fear is for the Lorraine, East Cleveland, and Youngstown school districts, because I'm very confident we'll get something done for those future school districts. But we can't forget these 3 school districts. I know Representative Miller and Senator Feder and I and others are going to make sure of that. So hopefully we will get something done sooner rather than later. And happy to take any questions after Representative Miller has an opportunity.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sorry. Not the one that wants to get up there. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Well, thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me. President Ballard and all the distinguished guests here that care about what goes on in schools, cares about what goes on in these 3 particular schools that are under assault, under siege. We get it. We see it. We live it. And I'm down there trying to do something about it. Nate's down there trying to do something about it. And to be honest with you, I think there's a lot more than we are willing to recognize, because they're doing things either, like I said, below the water or above the water, but there's a lot of waves being made. What I can say is, Senator Manning, when I came down there, like I said, he's a veteran. He's a veteran. And what I've come down to learn really quick is we have policy, we have politics. And unfortunately, and it's maybe because I'm either naive or just idealistic, that you take care of good policy and you worry about the politics on the outside of that. Unfortunately, sometimes it becomes politics first, and then we'll figure out where the policy falls. We saw how that happened. When people have political agendas, you get what you get, and the takeover of House Bill 70, which really was supposed to be a quality piece of legislation that a lot of legislators got behind. They hijacked it. We know it was done in one day. The thing I hear is, I think we need to wait. I think we really need to take our time through this, work our way through, and I'm thinking, you all sat there and voted yes, except for Nate and a couple others, and I appreciate that vote, Senator Manning. And you voted for that. You knew that 10-page document that became 77 was going to wreak some havoc, and you did it for politics. You didn't do it for policy. That's a problem. I'm going to fight for policy first. I'm going to try to learn the politics on the backside of it. And Superintendent Graham and I were having a discussion, and I think I opened his eyes to just how naive I am about the politics side. He's kind of looking at me going, And I will, but I'm gonna wade into it with the focus on good policy. And good policy for Youngstown, good policy for East Cleveland, good policy for Lorraine. But that's not it. We have 610 plus, 611 school districts that deserve better. Deserve not just a stop, right? Not just a removal, but an overall opportunity where these superintendents and boards can work together with some outside expertise and come together and provide these kids with that excellent educational opportunity. We need to take that train off the track that's going over the cliff. 3 of them already in the ravine, in a mess. All right, we need to pull those back out. We need to get the train back on the right track. And we need that train to be packed.
Right.
We need the cars to be added based on the community itself. That's what our bill 154 is supposed to do. I believe that there's still, even though we're pretty excited, we have 5 different entities plus more on this bill 154, we still think that there's some stuff that can be done to that bill to make it even better. And there's only so many hours in the day, there's only so many days in the week. I promise you, I want to meet with every one of you. I want to meet with East Cleveland, I want to meet with Youngstown. Actually, I'll be in Youngstown on Monday. And I want to continue those conversations. And every time I've continued conversations with people that are invested in the care, better legislation comes out. But we cannot wait any longer. We have to pull these schools out. We have to get rid of HB 70's bad policies. Once we do that, these schools will be in the right direction. I believe that the people up here, people out in the audience here that are a part of these 3 schools, love that school, care about that school. I want to see these kids thrive and survive. You know, I keep hearing this word stick. I'm tired of it. And these kids grow up with sticks all their lives. All their lives, they grow up with sticks. Let's give them some carrots. Let's give them some help. Let's give them some support. And let's get them an opportunity at the American dream. And if we don't fix the education system, we've stymied that in the earliest time of their life. So I'm here to support your efforts. Please let me know what I can do. Senator Manning's probably got a bunch of good ideas as well. He's been around. I know his mom's got a lot of experience. I'm hoping that she's going to reach out as well, and in our committee when our vote continues on this side, and somewhere together, whether through the budget, which probably is going to be more than likely the way it goes. But the good thing about, and what I appreciate about Senator Manning's and appreciate about the different bills in our House, and by the way, I appreciate what the ground movement has caused. Those things have caused the discussion to happen. And if the discussion doesn't happen, people will just turn a blind eye. We've stopped doing that. Columbus is awake. The governor doesn't want this on the stain on his shirt now. He's ready for a fix. He's left a placeholder in the budget. It's probably where it'll get done. But we've had 3 really good conversations in the Senate because of Senator Manning's bill. And because of the 2 bills in our House, we have even conversation happening there. That's the key. Get people talking, get people understanding, get the testimony out there of how much hurt and pain and turmoil this new bill has caused, and let's get the fix in. All right, and the fix was put in by Kasich. We're going to get the fix in for the kids, not the politics, not the governor, but for the kids. That's our focus. That's just, thank you.
And as she's coming in, Senator Feller, you're next on the mic.
I have a question.
Oh, sure.
Actually, 2. Which one of your bills excludes Youngstown and Lorraine and East Cleveland?
Okay, we have 2 bills, 127 and 154. 127 is the bill put out last GA, because with the governor there, that's the only thing I hope they can get was a moratorium. 127 is a moratorium. We have movement now, and honestly, it started with the grassroots. It's the push by Youngstown, it's the push by Lorraine, it's the push by East Cleveland, community members that have gotten this to move past the moratorium. So 127 is a moratorium. They just amended it to be a repeal, because that's what our bill 154 does, and I think that that's where the momentum is going. However, our bill 154 takes it a step further. Listen, I don't know how much you're paying attention to England, but I'm not into this whole Brexit idea. You know what? We just want out. We don't know what that means. We don't know where we're going to go. We just want out. That's not fair. Because if you look at what's going on in England, right? They don't know what they're gonna do now. They're all scrambling, their businesses are scrambling, their economy's scrambling, they're like, what do we do now? Okay, we're out, time's up. And that, we can't do that to children. Businesses will recover. The economy will bounce back. These kids have one shot at this.
True.
One shot. And I believe that if we just keep pushing 154 out there, I don't care if it turns around and becomes the YLE bill, Youngstown, Lorraine, East Cleveland. It doesn't matter to me what you call it.
Yes.
Just make it right. Once again, good policy will figure out the politics. I'm not worried about the politics. I'm worried about the policy right now. That's what the mandate was for me to come down here. That's what I promised Lorraine and my constituents I'd do. That's why I'm here. So thank you. Does that
One
answer?
more, yes,
Oh,
it does, one more.
Sure.
And do any of the bills presented restore our districts to their prior financial position?
Now we're bringing money into it.
Yeah.
That is, we have a couple things going on. We have, yeah, we have initiatives.
Oh, you are?
I think we're gonna cover
Yes,
some of those
so-
in the next bill. We'll let, Senator, Teresa come up, Senator Cutter, and then we'll come back to the Q&A and answer all those questions.
President Ballard, I'm gonna give you that life preserver you just threw.
Thank you.
Well, good morning. Good morning. I see so many friendly faces here that I've had relationships with for, well, 19 years. I've been in the public schools, 18 years in the classroom. This is my 19th year in the legislature. And I left my babies in the classroom to help them have an opportunity in this country through education. And opportunity is the word that we need to focus on today and focus on as we move out of the situation we're in. So I'm gonna pose some questions, kind of challenge us. We don't wanna be all over the place because chaos never gets us anywhere. So being focused and listening to these school board members, and thank you for your dedication and commitment to our democratic process of local control and the local communities having their voice heard and organized and operating for that opportunity. So if House Bill 70 is the vision, let me say that again. If House Bill 70 is the vision for fixing education in Ohio, it's time to go back to the drawing board, or for me, the
Yes.
chalk.
Yes.
This design is a complete failure.
Yes.
And
True.
disastrous for whole communities. We have 3 whole communities represented here. And if we were to add up those numbers, it would be in the hundreds of thousands of people that are impacted by that failed policy, including the businesses who don't like what's going on with the vision of House Bill 70. But that is our education fix, because as legislators, my service in the State House has always been the focus of education reform, to modernize our education system, to meet the needs of our community and the technology that we have today, and we must be focused on preparing our children to meet those challenges. So it's shameful, and it must be ended. And I'm hoping that today is the beginning of the solution, because my colleagues in the Senate do not have the solutions. You have the solutions, because you're close to it. You're trying to make that opportunity work for those children in this state and in this country, and I truly believe this scheme was cooked up as a political stunt for then Governor Casey looking to run for president.
Yes.
We saw how all that turned out. He failed, his education reform plan failed. It's now time for our state leaders to admit this was the wrong move within 24 hours and not one hearing.
Yes.
Ooh. It's failing our children, failing our communities, and our great state. The proof is in the question, which reveals a very disingenuous motive. And here's the question that I pose every single time that I'm on the Education Committee in the Senate, which is recorded, by the way, thank God. Took me 30 years to do that. But, and some of you have asked this question. Is there a clear understanding on the exit strategy for Lorraine, Youngstown, East Cleveland, under the state takeover to move you out of state receivership? Does anybody have a clear vision of step by step by step on how we are going to get back our schools, get back to the state school board, who was elected in a democratic process? If not, if there is not a clear exit strategy to get out of state receivership, this is a complete ruse. Complete ruse. And it must end now and today in this country. I'm a state legislator, worked on education for 19 years, I was a classroom teacher for 19 years, I'm a veteran as well. So I take my job very seriously. Imagine 10 more urban communities between 2020 and 2022 suffering the same chaos.
Yes.
That is the vision that the state legislators and the governor need to see. You shouldn't have to stand here and convince everybody on why this is such a bad idea, because they can't answer that question. They want us to waste our time, to get into the weeds, to convince them that this was a really bad idea. Do you see I'm kind of angry about it? Because I know what House Bill 70 was originally, and I know what happened within 24 hours of the concurrence vote back to the House. It turned into something I never recognized, and something that I saw as a political platform for running for president. Now, change, and real change, begins with cooperation, collaboration, and funding that needs to be there and exist for you to move out of that receivership. And there needs to be a real value of trustworthiness. Anybody feel that this system and this reform is trustworthy?
No.
No. You can't get straight answers. You can't get public records requests on how to follow the money. Where is the money? Where are those pennies? Lay them on the table. That is your charge. So CEO Harding has failed in all these areas. Thus, I believe he needs to resign.
Yes.
Who are not locally connected and living in your community should resign and clean house. If we don't accomplish this, and there are 3 different tracks that I see that are happening right now, I'm just watching. I'm watching to see how Joe's bill is going to have solutions. We're going to see how the receivership is going to be pointed out exactly for those school districts that are suffering in the chaos right now. And for the 10 others who are worried that this next report card is going to put them in the same situation we are. So we have a lot of work to do. We all know why it's a bad idea. We should stop complaining about it and identifying it, and let's follow that money, because there is scandal. I guarantee you, there's scandal. And believe me, Republicans don't want another ECOT on their hands. And I've been there 19 years, and I know exactly how to sniff all that out. And I've gotten a lot of resignations in my career. And this stinks to high heaven. So I'm here to listen. We've got some really great people here, great Americans who care about their children. I don't care what color you are, purple, green, orange. If you're an American, you live in this country, you get the same opportunity that I had, which is why I left my classroom, was those little 9-year-olds didn't have the same opportunity I had growing up. And this state forced me out of that classroom, because I didn't see the right education reform. And here we are today, with the worst thing I've ever seen in my career, in my time, which is spans over 30 years. Superintendent, you know what I'm talking about. It's time to get down to the real business of modernizing education, supporting that classroom teacher. Get those resources in that classroom. If you want to do their job, you're not in debt for $60,000 to get through college, or whatever the average is, to be a bad teacher. It's our job to help them be the best teacher in their heart that they want to be. So I'm here to listen, here for the duration. I want to thank all of the school board members who've been communicating with me. I've got notebooks that are very thick, don't I, Chelsea? My staff and the Senate caucus staff, Kelly, is here, and she helps direct us. And we are taking very good notes. And I can't tell you how much I respect Representative Manning. Thank you for taking this on, because he has always been in your corner. He has always been there to try to make sense of this. If we can take our political hats off, which we must do because children don't see R&D, Republican and Democrat. They see, first of all, love. They respond to love. And if they feel that love, guess what? They will turn somersaults in the air for you. And they will learn, and they will carry on the heritage of this great country. And that is through opportunity. And the only way that I've ever seen it is through public education. Public education, let's say it. Public education. Not loud enough. Public education. Yes, let's save it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Briefly, the president down in Youngstown is just arriving, wanted to be able to greet us and introduce who she's passing with her. Brenda?
Thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time. I'm still trying to catch my breath. I did leave Youngstown on time, but the turnpike said no. So, I just want to thank Mark for bringing this together for us today, and thank Dr. Sanders for hosting this thing for us. Hosting is not the word that I'm tired. I really am. I have another member with me there parking. I just wanted to say, and I just need to say today, that I appreciate everyone who is in the crowd. This means a lot to us down this aisle. This is not the first time that we've come together as a team, but this time has a lot of meaning to it, because now we have bills to look forward to try to push through to save our children. We've actually been together about 3 community meetings. These people have traveled to Youngstown. Michelle Elba from Warrensville, I thank her so much because she came by herself on several occasions. Dr. Rice, and these people were not in academic distress at that time, not with us, but they stood for us and Lorraine. And so I just want to thank them, the Community Leaders Coalition on Education, Bill Phyllis, Education Partners Group, the union leaders that came together. We've also met a couple of times up in Columbus as a team fighting this. And then over Upper Arlington had a meeting. So we've worked to get here, and we want to thank all those who helped us to this point, because we needed your help, and now we need it even more to be able to push this bill out of the way. So thank you.
We've got lots of dignitaries here, so I don't want to start calling names because I will start forgetting names. But we have 2 members of our local ABC here, and I did want to point out that Steve Coughlin and Diane Alexander are here. If you guys don't mind, take a stand. They actually work very, very closely with our community and with our board, because they know some of the ills that we're dealing with this hospital settlement. So, really quick, guys, I'm going to need a motion to relax the rules for today.
I motion that Mrs. Clinton comes to bring the
started. Roll call?
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes. Thank you. And with that, I am going to bring up my facilitator, my friend, guy, mentor, godfather, all those things. The wisdom that this man has, and the ability that he has. No, we've got a really, really good relationship, and he's done very well throughout the district. We're gonna bring up Dr. Sanders and say, again, publicly, thank you for all of you supporting. We call him Doc, guys, we call him Doc.
I'm going to make you an offer you cannot refuse. President Ballard, Dr. Keenan, David Keenan, and our distinguished guests from Youngstown.
Brenda, we are so appreciative of the opportunity to dialogue with you today, and we look forward to we look forward to our conversation. At your table, there is an agenda, and we knew that getting board members and elected officials together and staying on schedule is going to be quite a challenge for us today. But one of my tasks is to keep us on schedule as best we can, because we put together a lot of important sessions for you. They are designed to be interactive, so we want you to ask questions. Each of our presenters will afford time in their presentation for open dialogue. One of our Youngstown board members had a question about the current legislative options on the table. Our next speaker will be going over that in great detail. He has a handout for you as well, so you'll be able to follow along and take notes and engage, and that's our process throughout today. A couple of goals for today, essentially, is to be able to bring our three ADC designated districts together for dialogue, discussion, and feedback. We want to have a robust conversation today, and I want to thank my elementary teacher from the days that I had the pleasure of serving as the superintendent in Toledo. I can assure you that Senator Fetter was a fabulous teacher, and she's still teaching today. We appreciate that. It's always good to see you. And so today we want to ensure that you are informed and updated, and we want you to leave today. We want you to leave today with some action steps and some action plans for what we want to do next. Not just get together and have a good conversation, but to be able to actually leave today with some next steps in our local districts. I'm also representing today the Ohio Mid-Size Urban Districts Leadership Collaborative. This is a new organization of about 20 districts around the state of Ohio. We range from about 1,000 students to 5,000 students, and the superintendent and teacher union leaders of those districts are working together to identify academic initiatives and other work that we're doing, legislative and the like, to work together to build up school districts in Ohio and to specifically avoid the designation of anything related to ABC. You'll hear from those individuals a little bit later today as well. We also have a survey that we're going to ask you to complete, a very short survey at the very end of our day. And then at the end of the day, we'll be trying to wrap it up and talk about next steps. And our legislators, our parents, our community members will all have an opportunity to have dialogue and questions and get a lot of feedback. And so we're very excited, very, very, very excited about today. So does everyone have an agenda? Yes. All right. And two of my staff members are here, so they can help facilitate things a little bit today as well. And so on behalf of the Sandusky City Schools, which is my hometown, we're honored and delighted to be a part of this session as well. I think our Tropic Madison team might win the trophy today for coming from the longest distance. They are here from the Dayton, Ohio area. And I think it speaks of not only their commitment to education, but their interest in helping resolve matters that impact with that, we're going to open up our first session today. Okay, are we ready?
Yeah, sorry about that.
If y'all was in Sandusky, that'd be a problem, right? I'm out of town, I'm on my best behavior. I'm on my best behavior today. I'm on my best behavior. And poor Dr. Willis is sitting there going, I know I need to do something. I know I'm supposed to do something. Everything's okay. Before I bring Dan Hilson up, Sandusky, Lorraine, Elyria, and districts of that nature from the old Buckeye Conference days, we used to play a lot of football together. And usually after the football game, whoever lost was going to fight in the parking lot after school. So I told President Ballard that today there will be no fighting after this session between Sandusky and Youngstown. Sandusky and Lorraine, we're going to all be on the same team today, working hard to make a difference on behalf of our children. So I want to acknowledge the President-elect of the Ohio Alliance of Black School Educators who's with us today. My friend Tommy Maceo, they just had their conference. He's from Sandusky as well, and we are partnering together to network with a bunch of different groups and make good things happen. Dan Hilson is a lawyer and a lobbyist with Retzel and Andrews out of Columbus. He is working diligently with the Ohio Mid-Size Group along with the First Marine Superintendents Group of the Cleveland area and with a number of other districts to address education policy matters. And we're very pleased that Dan drove up from Columbus today to be with us. He's going to give us an update on the activities going on in the state legislature around HB 70 and other fiscal matters that are impacting our schools. And so with that, Dan, come on up. We appreciate you being here. There's a handout that he has. Arcade, Dr. Stroger, can you assist me in passing this out, please? That way he can get up and get started. Let's give him a nice hand. Welcome, Dan.
Good morning, everybody. I also would like to introduce my colleague, Alex Thomas. Alex is also with Retzel. And what we would like to do is kind of provide you with our perspective of what's happening and what sort of in the last year and a half from the perspective of an advocate, right? So we heard from the legislators and they're very involved in what's happening and trying to drive certain behaviors. And I'm just starting to work with Bill Miller, but I've worked with Senator Fetter for all 19 years, I think. And so our perspective is kind of four things we're looking to do. One is stop the proliferation of the ADCs, return local control, revise the report card so we're actually measuring academic performance, not all the other things that the report card currently purports to measure, and then also providing the schools tools to improve academic performance. And it's kind of in that fashion. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Alex. He's going to get us started, and then I'll sort of wrap up and kind of tell you where I think we find ourselves.
All right, thanks, Dan. I'm actually going to take this off here because I'm too short to reach it. Thanks, everyone, for having us again. Just wanted to start off by giving a little bit of an overview of what's going on in the State House. There are several pieces of legislation currently moving in both the House and the Senate that impacts the Academic Distress Commission and the provisions of HB 70. So just to give you a little bit of an overview of how some of those things are interplaying right now. Yeah, so I'll start with, obviously many of you are involved in one or more of these groups. All of these organizations from FASO, ASBO, OFT, OEA, Fordham, and then the school district organizations directly, the Ohio 8, which are the big schools, First Ring, the schools around Cleveland, and the mid-sized urbans that Dr. Sanders just mentioned to you. All of these groups are actively engaged and prioritizing these matters. Of course, everyone's currently, focused on other items as well in education, like school funding, and many other things. But all of these groups have committed to making this particular issue a priority, because folks like you have made it very clear this is something that we need to be spending time on. There are a few bills in the House right now that are interacting with this space. The first one, the House Bill 122, is actually a reintroduction of a bill that many of you saw in the last General Assembly. It eliminates Ed Choice and the Ed Choice expansion and the Cleveland Scholarship and rolls it all into a new Opportunity Scholarship program. It also pulls the funding out, so it's not deducted directly from the school districts, but funded in a separate line item. Representative Taylor is working on this issue right now in the House. We're not quite sure if this bill is going to get any movement at the moment, but just something to be aware of. We met with Representative Taylor on this a few weeks ago, and he feels like Ed Choice is going to explode, is the phrase that he uses over and over again. So he's looking to fund that separately. Again, probably not going to move anytime soon. Representatives Cuff and Patterson in the House are working on a new school funding model that may address some of this issue. Moving on, there are two bills right now, primarily in the House Education Committee, that deal directly with academic distress commissions. Representatives Hambley and Kent Smith have introduced House Bill 127, which started as just a moratorium on the creation of any new academic distress commissions. It was amended just this week, I think, in committee to dissolve currently existing academic distress commissions as well. Also, House Bill 154, Representative Miller is here today, and his joint sponsor, Representative Jones, I think takes a more detailed look at how to better deal with the issue of struggling schools. It also dissolves existing ADCs. It was amended this week as well to make some changes to the improvement plans and sort of the timeline in which those plans are implemented in the school district, all preserving local control and giving school districts, I think, the flexibility to implement plans that actually, can benefit their unique districts with input from local community leaders. And Representative Miller, correct me if I'm off base on any of that.
No, that's pretty accurate.
Great. And then lastly, the budget bill, House Bill 166, technically introduced by Representative Olslager, but as of right now, these are the governor's proposed initiatives on a number of items, from healthcare, education, to really every area of state policy. There are some provisions related to academic distress commissions in that bill. I think the governor tried to take some, but not all, of ODE's recommendations. We saw those that came out, I think, last month. That was in a study that was published in response to a provision that was passed into law last year, requiring ODE to take a look at what's going right and wrong with the ADCs as currently implemented. So Governor DeWine has proposed some language around ADCs. Still gives the superintendent, state superintendent, a lot of, I'll say, interaction or involvement in how these are implemented. So that's what's going on now. So there's several pieces of legislation that deal with ADCs in sort of different forms, and I think members of the House are having a pretty robust conversation right now around what is the best way to take action to remedy this situation. A few pieces of legislation also in the Senate, really one primary bill in the Senate. Senator Manning's here actually today, has introduced a bill that makes some pretty significant changes specifically for Lorraine. So that's another bill that's actively being heard and moving in the legislature right now. So I think your representatives here and and some others around the state are showing some real leadership on this issue and recognizing this is a real challenge for us. So we thank them for that really important work. And then, Senator Lehner is the chair of the Senate Education Committee, is also engaging on this issue. She's trying to, I think, take a big picture view on how do we really fix this problem. Like Dan mentioned, she recognizes the issues with the assessments themselves and what are we really measuring when we're looking at school districts and school buildings. So she's convening a meeting this coming week with some superintendents and some other folks from the education community to talk about the struggles with academic performance and how we remedy this. So that I threw a lot at everyone there. Are there any questions about any of that, or do any of the members of the General Assembly want to contribute any of that? Did I miss anything? Feel free to jump in. Yeah.
When you keep saying that it's moving along in the legislation, how long does this moving along take?
That's the question. So she asked, I suggested a few times that these bills are moving through the process, and how long does that process take? The answer is sometimes a little bit unknown. The bills, most of these bills have had several hearings now in both in their respective education committees in the House or the Senate. None of these bills have been voted on out of committee, and that would be just kind of the first step in a several-step process. The bill has to be voted out of the committee. Then the chamber, either the House or the Senate, would need to deliberate as a full body and vote on that bill. And then it goes over to the other chamber where it's deliberated on committee again, voted on committee, and passed out of that chamber where it, presuming there were no changes to the bill in the second chamber, would go to the governor for his signature or veto. So I don't know that we have an exact timeline on some of this stuff. The budget bill has a hard deadline. That bill must be signed by the governor by the end of June, as the fiscal year for the state starts July 1. So the provisions related to ADC in the budget, if they were to stay in that bill as introduced, would be signed by the end of June. That is highly unlikely. Both the House and the Senate are taking a hard look at the governor's proposal on this and many other things, and will make very substantial changes to that over the course of the next couple of months. But I think, right now, at least in the House, where a couple of these bills are being heard in the Education Committee, I think, and we had a conversation with some folks in leadership and the chairman's office this week, I think they're hearing a lot of input from folks like us right now, and they're hearing the discussion that's being had around both of the two bills in the House, and now seeing what the governor's introduced in the budget. I think there's just a desire to try to figure out what the best way forward is, which bill it might be, what format that bill might take. And then I would expect to see movement on that in the coming weeks. I wish I had a harder timeline for you there, but it's certainly full speed ahead, I think, in the legislature to get this done. It's not something that we want to rush and do incorrectly, but everyone understands the urgency of this and just how critical it is. And I'm sorry if I sound like I'm speaking for the legislature. I'm not, but that's my impression of having spent some time with your representatives and others.
So you're sort of saying that it might happen this year?
Oh, she asked if it might happen this year. I think everyone firmly intends for something to happen by the summer.
HB 154, my reading of what you presented here talks about using ADCs, but what we were presented with was not only ADCs would be eliminated, but CEOs. So has that changed? CEOs
are are creatures of the ADC.
Yes.
So if the ADC goes away, yeah. the
Oh, so
CEO
that's a deal,
yeah.
okay, okay. And our CEO has resigned effective the end of July, and so we're currently in the process, well, they are currently in the process of selecting his replacement. So what happens if, hopefully, HB 154 is put into place? How, just generally speaking, how will that impact what our local folks are doing?
Timing for that will be interesting from the standpoint that a bill, once it's passed, unless it has an emergency clause, is not effective for 90 days after passage. So even if something is in the budget, it doesn't become effective till the end of September, early October. So you are gonna have timing where you're gonna need somebody, right? And then that somebody may have a very short tenure in that position as CEO.
Can you clarify to everybody here how the emergency takes the 90 days off, and then how in the budget, if there is appropriation added to the policy, then the 90 days is no longer effective?
Yeah, so what happens typically, the budget bill is a very thick bill, and it has all the appropriations for all the different aspects of state government. And in my 37 years of experience, I have never seen a budget bill that doesn't have at least some language that is circled and targeted with an emergency clause. An emergency clause isn't really any different than what you deal with, right? It's for the safety, health, and welfare of the people. So this clearly could qualify. I mean, you're changing the whole structure of a school system. So, now, it could be challenged in the courts, but I don't see, first of all, who would challenge? And then secondly, I think it would clearly pass the constitutional muster. And so then it becomes effective upon the governor's signature, which will be June 30th, July 1st, usually about midnight of June 30th, July 1st is when the governor usually is frantically trying to sign that bill. So thank you, that's a perfect segue. Once again, my name is Dan Hilson, and I wanted to sort of start that, as you can see, especially for those who have been involved for a while, perseverance does pay dividends. There's a reason I have a flat forehead. I've been beating against the wall for 30-some years on various issues. All of you are experiencing the same thing. If you continue to ask for a redress of grievances, that's the beauty of our system. Usually you'll get them. They may not be exactly the way you want them, but there will be attention. I see Dr. Rice is here. She sat in committee with me last summer when we could get hardly anybody's attention on this issue. And we had then Representative Fetter, who had sponsored a bill. We had talked about it, said, look, this moratorium's bad. We're gonna have all these schools going into ADC. The Department of Education is neither equipped, nor is it in a position to run schools. That's not what they do. And she agreed, drafted an amendment, and tried real hard to get it into 216. And Dr. Rice was there to see something that I've never seen in 30-some years, where the chairman was losing the vote, clearly losing the vote, so they stopped committee, went out to get a couple members, because their members are, maybe have 2 or 3 simultaneous committees going on. They brought members in and then quickly realized, uh-oh, they're on the other side. They're for the amendment. And so he just picked up the gavel and said, we're stopping committee, and went home.
Sure did.
And I've never seen that. I've never seen that where they, totally lose control and then did not come back and meet for multiple weeks because they could not get the change vote. Because what had happened is they had called a vote to table the amendment, which just stops it. That was defeated. So that means there had to be a vote on the amendment. They called the vote, but then called for the vote, but never actually called the vote, and they were stuck. So it was a very interesting, procedurally to see this happen. And then Senator Fetter and Representative Smith negotiated with then Chairman Brenner on this, where we're at least going to have a study. We're not going to waste this opportunity. So that's sort of where we got to. And also what was interesting is I remember telling Senator Lehner and some others, I said, this ADC is going to run amok. We're going to have 6, 8, 10 more schools. Madison Provo is on the verge, Warrensville, Maple Heights. And the governor's office and the Department of Education quickly tried to put a damper, say that's ridiculous, that's not gonna happen. And then what happened in October? I was wrong, it was not 8 more schools, it was 14 more schools that were slotted now to be on the pathway to ADC. And I think that got a lot of people's attention as well. So even though it became sort of a fait accompli because everybody knew the governor didn't say that he would veto any changes at ADC, but he was quoted in the Youngstown Vindicator that I will vehemently veto with all of my power and passion anything that changes that. Well, if you're a legislator, why are you gonna vote for something that the governor's already told you you're gonna veto? So just nothing happened. It just sat there. Move forward, this General Assembly, he asked the question about how long will this move? Procedurally, anything that's introduced in this General Assembly has to be dealt with in 2 years. Okay, because the General Assembly lasts 2 years. It'll stop in December of 20. And so either a bill passes, or if it doesn't pass, it's dead and it starts all over again. So that's really sort of your end timeline. We think it'll happen this year, but all the effort spent this year, if it doesn't pass, it's still good for next year. But then it's over. So let's talk about 2 possible avenues for reform. It's just, once again, this is kind of procedurally. Number 1, insert some language in the budget. There is some language there. It's very, very possible and probable, I would even say probable, that you'll find language from some of the other bills, include Representative Miller's bill, finding its way into the budget. And it would be introduced through the primary and secondary subcommittee and then on to the finance committee. I think that's gonna happen. Then it flows over to the Senate. The Senate's gonna make some changes, because the Senate also has some ideas. Well, it's all in discussion, so that's avenue number 1. The reason why that's a good choice is because, as Alex said, there's a date certain, June 30th, that bill has to pass. Okay, so you know what you're gonna get by June 30th. The second one is, we just have a standalone legislation like we have, and it works through the normal process. Because the legislature's tied up with the budget, those other bills don't move very fast right now. There is some movement, but the legislature's kind of all consumed with the budget, because there's a lot, it's literally this thick, and there's a lot to deal with. So those are your 2 avenues. What I think will happen is both. I think there'll be some, and I'll talk about this later, some reform in the budget, and then bites 2 and 3 at the apple will happen in some subsequent standalone legislation and or other bills. Have anybody in here ever heard the concept legislative intent? They'll talk about when a bill, something's being usually challenged in the courts. Well, what was the legislative intent? What I will tell you, there is no such thing. There's 132 legislators that have a different intent, different concept, and that's what we have here. We have a lot of people with a lot of ideas that will coalesce at some point in time and pass some reform. I would say that soup is being brewed right now, or being cooked. It's not ready yet, but it will happen. And I am seeing a completely different attitude by the members of the General Assembly this year than last year. So let's talk a little bit about what I call the 4 steps. This is what the House seems to be advocating, and I'm using it now collectively after talking to many other members, what's going to happen. So step 1, which is the House Bill 127, started out, stop the bleeding, moratorium, 1-page bill, everybody can read a 1-page bill and understand it. No more ADCs. That's slightly got changed now, not to no more ADCs, but let's get rid of ADCs. Much different, okay? Because now you gotta replace it with something, and as Representative Miller said, you gotta do something. So that would be step 1, stop the ADCs. Number 2, and I think it is this priority, is return local control to the districts that are already in ADCs. I know Representative Miller expressed to us in a private meeting with him that he is very concerned that if we do something about stopping on the moratorium, that the legislature kind of moves on to the next step and forgets about those 3 schools. And we assured him, no, the Ring of 21 and the mid-sized urbans have advocated, and along with the Big 8, we're not doing that. we're not gonna let those 3 schools flounder out there. So for the 3 schools that are here, you have a lot of support by your brethren in the education community that they're not gonna let that happen. And Representative Miller has advocated, he's not gonna let that happen. And Senator and sometimes, you know, people have the best intents, but you can see they get stymied, it doesn't work. I'm pretty sure something's gonna happen. So we're gonna see that. So step 2, was that return the local control. Step 3, this is a little harder. This is the piece that I don't know we can get done in time for the budget. And that is, what are we measuring with our report card? It's interesting, I read a couple treatises and some research papers that say academic proficiency exams are designed to distinguish and rank students. They are not good measurements for school districts or even school buildings. It's kind of like taking a thermometer and putting it into a saucer of water because you want to measure the quantity of water. Wrong tool, okay? It just doesn't work. So what we really want to measure is academic performance. In order to increase academic performance, you have to have a baseline. Okay, you have to have a starting point. We don't do that. So the whole idea of using academic proficiency exams from students to measure a school building is not going to give a very clear picture. Well, here's what it does measure. It does measure poverty. It measures parental control or involvement. Just go down through the list. These are all the things. These are all, but that doesn't tell us whether or not the doors are good. And I'm sure many of you have tried this. I've tried it with legislators, which is if you take a school and take the superintendent, the board, and all the teachers and put them into an F school and do the same with the F, are you gonna, within a couple of years, are they gonna change around? And I go, well, of course not. I said, so then it's probably not the superintendent, not the school board, not the teachers, that's the problem, right? There are other issues at bay. So I think they're starting to come around to that, not all, but many of them. The last step, which is probably the hardest, which is what's this, you know, how do we reform our academic improvement and how do we get there? So here's some of the things, you know, identify the areas for improvement, adopt evidence-based practices. Accountability is a part. Every legislator that I talk to wants accountability. Now what that means is different to different legislators, but accountability is going to be a part. And then one of the things that Dr. Sanders has talked about, and I think we're really making progress, is this peer-supported reform and coaching. That you learn better from your peer school districts, not from Columbus. Columbus sends somebody up and tells you how to change and how to reform, and you kind of look at them, and we've heard everything from, I fired that guy 2 years ago. He was terrible. Now he's telling me how to run my district.
Yes.
You know, we hear all of this. So that's one of the areas. So real quick, the summary. Growing recognition that the ABC experiment, shockingly, has worked nowhere, and it's not working in Ohio either, okay?
Right.
The state can't take over the schools, they can't run the schools, bad mission, let's restart. Report card, a lot of people are saying, yeah, our report card needs reform. And then also, the last sort of piece, as always, there's gonna be cooperation / competition between the House and the Senate House all this. Everybody's gonna have different concepts. And I learned a long time ago, we never create legislation that's the best possible legislation that can be created. It's the best possible legislation that the parties can agree to. So just remember that. So yes, we're gonna see reform. Yes, we're gonna see improvement. It may not be exactly what you want, but it's gonna be better. And I think that's it. Yes. Thank you very much.
Let's give Dan and Alex another hand. I'm going to ask if President Ballard and Mr. Demakia, Dr. Rice, and Mr. Shad would take the seats over where the treasurer is. We're going to transition to our next panel. So if you would proceed there right now, that would be excellent. And Dr. Rice, would you please take the microphone if possible with you to hold it to the table there. Thank you very much. Our next session is entitled, focuses on the impact of the agency on local control, economic development, and academic growth in the districts that have been impacted. Our president, Mr. Ballard, is going to be the facilitator for this session. You may stay seated where you are. And then our three board members, Dr. Rice, Mr. Demakia, and Mr. Shad will provide responses, and then we'll save a portion of the session for questions from the audience as well. I want to acknowledge one of my board members that's present, Mr. Crable, who is here, former president and the board. Thank you for being here. They are very gracious and allow me to be engaged in any of these extra activities, and we deeply appreciate that. Mr. Ballard.
Yes, sir. Thank you all. Thank you to the panelists for participating in this panel. As you know, my name is Mark Ballard, and I've been on the school board now for 4 years. And I ran for this school board because I wanted to be a contributor to our schools, to our community. And we were elected to do just that, and that privilege has been taken away from us. The way this panel is going to run, I will first give each panelist an opportunity to introduce themselves, say what your role is with your board and how active you are and what you're doing here as a community. And then I'll pose a few questions for you all, for us to just kind of, questions that are important to all of us in this room. So I'll start to my colleague, Mr. Demakia, please.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. And this is an extremely important issue. Obviously, 3 districts have been drastically affected by organized crime. I asked Mark, I said, "You sure you want me to sit up here and talk?" I don't tend to play nice when it comes to House Bill 70. But again, my name's Tony Demaki. I'm the Vice President of the Lorraine Board of Education. And again, thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Demakia and I have been on several different boards and events dealing with House Bill 70. But my name is Mary Rice. I'm from East Cleveland, Ohio. I'm a board member for this is my 4th year. Currently, I am my board president appointed me as president of the House Bill 70 committee. And I think it's a gift to do whatever I can to abolish House Bill 70.
Hi, I'm Ron Shad. I've been on the Youngstown City School Board for 5 years, and my role is similar to yours too. I'm the committee chair for our HB 70 piece, and we've just been actively just wanting to bring attention to this issue because it's funny to me that they try to say that the 7 people that are on our board were bad for education, but didn't look at this law and what was going into place and how it took away voters' rights, taxpayer rights, and essentially is a union buster. So we're looking at this as saying like this piece of legislation destroys communities, not builds them up. So we've been fighting actively since the ruling came out.
This is the first opportunity we've had to sit in an official board meeting to have this conversation collectively. So to any of you or all of you, how has the ADC affected your district and your community as a whole?
Where do you start? When we first started in Lorraine, we approached it as I promised myself I would never use this word because it's been so abused in Lorraine. We promised ourselves we would collaborate with the state of Ohio and the Ohio Department of Education, the state superintendent. So we played nice. We approached it as a situation where listen, it's inevitable. This bill's gonna come down, we need to accept it, we need to embrace it, we need to do what we need to do. We got with all of our 7 unions and got contractual language that was aligned directly to House Bill 70. We got an academic plan with our current superintendent and all of our staff that was directly aligned with the language in House Bill 70. And all along the way, ODE and everybody patted us on the back and said, wow, you guys are doing great work. We're so happy, you know, everything's doing great in Lorraine, awesome. And that was with the first commission. The commission, they worked collectively with us, and we were at the table, and I believe at that time we all had the same mission and vision as far as enhancing our quality of education. Nobody on the Board of Ed or in our school district will ever say that, hey, listen, we don't do the best that we can. We need to get better. There's no question about that. But the reality is there are some barriers that we have not addressed, and House Bill 70 doesn't address them. So in the beginning, we embraced this process, and you know, after they got rid of it, as we went through the law, they abolished the first commission, and then Lorraine got slapped in its face by the state of Ohio, and they got this new commission, and it was just downhill, where it was a takeover, an aggressive takeover, where they came in and just blew our district up. And it started with our central office. You know, our sitting superintendent, who had more qualifications than anybody that they searched and found, Dr. Jeff Graham, at the time, they did this national search and came up with these 5 candidates that had no qualifications whatsoever to run the school district. And then we get stuck with the buffoon we have now that it just, I mean, you can't make up the nonsense that has occurred in our school district. And, you know, currently as we sit, the irreparable harm that has occurred in Lorraine to our students, to our community, to our teachers, it's been a blatant attack. And I said organized crime earlier because I believe it has been. I think this is the, for lack of better ways to put it, the most racist bill that I've ever seen. I mean, think about what this bill is attacking. It's attacking minority, urban, poverty-inflicted school districts. What are they doing? And I don't, you know, I don't want to get off track here, and I don't want to offend any of our legislators here, because I do appreciate all the work that you guys are doing and your support. But I've lost complete faith in our legislative system in fixing this problem, because there's, I mean, I'm not sure that Lorraine's going to recover at this time, where we're at. And, you know, this bill needed to be fixed a long time ago, a year and a half ago, to be honest with you. And the more time that we waste with the political nonsense that we have in Columbus, and, you know, I'm just going to say this, and I'll end it and move on to you guys, but what I don't understand is our governor controlled our state board of education and our state superintendent to get House Bill 70 passed overnight. But yet here we are with bills that are going to fix a problem that clearly everybody has admitted is such a bad situation for public education. But yet now these bills have to go through this long process of getting the constitutional 3 hearings and making sure that we pass it through this House and pass it through the Senate, and, you know, now we're going to push this along. But, you know, our current sitting governor, who says that he is in support of fixing this problem, you know, if our former government had control of our state superintendent or state board of education, why doesn't our current governor have that power? You know, what are we doing? And, you know, to be honest with you, you know, Paolo DeMaria he's got to go.
Yes.
And if the governor believes in fixing this problem, you know, then take control of your 9 appointments to that state board of education. You let them know, I need this fixed, I need it fixed now. But I mean, I can go on and on and on, but this bill is so bad, it's just done so much damage, and I mean, it makes my stomach sick just thinking about it in the time that we've dealt with this. So, and I know you're going to hear similar stories, because it's clear what House Bill 70 has done to public education, and more importantly to our poverty-afflicted and minority urban school districts that we're all sitting here to see.
Thank you. I'm just so upset that you're not passing passionate about this issue. He did do a great job.
Yeah.
I'll say he did. Everything that he had said, ditto. And let me add just a few other things. When I first heard that Youngstown was going into the ADC process and is going to be taken over, et cetera, I started reading everything that I could possibly read about the issue so that I would be knowledgeable and try to understand. Plus, I'm a Youngstowner, so I wanted to really know what was going on with the Youngstown schools. I graduated from South High School in Youngstown, so I said, what? You know, so as I began to read and try to understand and then begin to look at some of the political things, I said, wow, this is wrong on every single solitary issue. Then I heard about Lorraine, and you know that Lorraine had embraced the House Bill 70 process, and that they were really going to cooperate with everyone, and they were going to, they were going to turn this process around, and students and children and families were going to benefit from it. So I look around, and about 7 months later, all types of things were in the press about Lorraine and what was happening, and I began to read even more. And then when East Cleveland, when we were threatened, that's when I put on my little shoes and start going everywhere I possibly can to learn more about the process and see what was happening. But in the meantime, before it even came to us, teachers began to leave the system. Teachers who had been there for years and wanted to retire from the East Cleveland school system. They left because they were scared of what had happened in Youngstown and what had happened in Lorraine, and so they were expecting it to happen in East Cleveland, and they left. Not only that, right here, we have a grandparent in here whose daughter left and took her children out of the system because she was afraid. That's only one incident that I'm telling you about, and the grandmother's right here, so that she can share with you as well. It's happened all over our city, that people were moving out of our city because of House Bill 7. That's before it even came. Teachers began to leave. So therefore, at the start of this school year, we started at a deficit because of House Bill 70, and it really hadn't even came yet. It is the most destructive. How in the world could this governor have even, and he wants to run for president? Can you imagine what would happen across the United States if he got into any of those policies? Well, look what has happened with our cities, with our students, with our communities. And on that note, I'm not passionate about it either. I'll pass it over.
Well, for us, the biggest concern we have is that Youngstown was under academic distress in 2010. So what did HB 70 fix if the state already had control over academics in our district? I mean, it was them revamping their plan about their performance and not ours, because they had total control over our academic process. And no vote that our board had passed during that time was bad for education. Anything our superintendents needed during that time, they got. It may not have been a unanimous vote, but they got the vote to get whatever they needed to get the job done. So our focus was, why create this bill that puts more emphasis on destroying the local control piece when the state already had control? How would measures need to be taken for the state to revamp what they do? I don't think that's new legislation. I think that's a new approach to education and how we view it in Ohio. One of the pieces that I'll add to this piece, we lost a lot of staff too, and part of that loss was not only because HB 70 was coming, it was a big part of it, but the other part was because the state had changed requirements for retirement for teachers. So they had to get out early. So some of that change impacted us in a way to where we lost, we had an average of 10 years of experience for our teachers, and that dropped to 7. So I want to be known that HB 70 played a huge role in that, but also how we treat education in our state played a bigger role in making us lose 10-year professionals that had to retire in order to have a better life after education or after their jobs. So that was a huge thing for us. Another thing, how HB 70 has impacted us is the lack of money being spent in the classroom. If this is an academic issue, why is it in our district that in the first year that the CEO took over, $6.1 million less was spent in the classroom. Then an additional 0.8% the following year, which is about 7.2%. So we're looking at, if you look at the time period from when the CEO came in to now, there's been $13 million less spent in the classroom. How do you fix an academic problem when you spend less in the classroom? We talked about, prior to HB 70, prior to us having a CEO, was right-sizing our district. So we were shrinking our administrative costs, like losing people through attrition and that sort of thing. And he hired 32 people at $100K to $120K salaries. And we pick up their retirement.
Wow.
We pick up another 10% of their retirement. So how did that fix our problem? And then the solution to this piece to kind of balance the budget was to eliminate 18 people who were in direct services like social workers and that sort of thing. 18 people lost their job at a total of $600,000, but we spent $600,000 under the CEO just in our coaching for our sports. But you get rid of social workers and you increase you create 32 new positions at 100+ salaries. You know, so we're talking about $3.5 million in salaries. So how do we come back from that? How do we come back from us having a surplus of $23 million, now us having a surplus of $10 million? He used $13 million in 1 year. He started practices that weren't sustainable. You can't spend at that volume and be able to sustain that process. So that's the problem we're in, is that even when this comes to an end, we have to make some strict changes on how we look at the educational futures of our children based off the money that's been spent in 1 year.
So I'm going to say, delivering through this, we're going to have question and answers from the audience, but we do have 2 questions from the legislators who are trying to help us fix this. So, Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Mr. Shad, we're seeing this in Lorraine as well. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but can those of you that are here that are experiencing this, is there starting to show a pattern of the mindset that we come into these districts, we shift money like a business up into the executive's hands, all right, away from our customers, our children. And I don't mean to mean the children as customers, but you know, the Kasich model, it's all about the CEO running the business. And away from where it really has its impact. Is it that, or is it let's go in and spend like this so we can blow up the financial part of the system and force a takeover because now it's a financial thing? I'm starting to see a strategy and a pattern here. Do you see that as well in the districts?
Yeah, we feel that way. Actually, we have we have a levy that we need to place on the ballot, and one of the
Wow.
Yeah, and so the question becomes, do we put a levy on the ballot and hope that there's a difference in spending practices, or do we know that, or do we predict that this money will be wasted in a way that it's been wasted already? For example, to give you an idea of the spending, we estimate that he spent, since he's been in power, $3.5 million in legal fees, right? So to give you an example of that, the year that we sued the state, started our lawsuit, and handled all of the law issues in our district, we spent $150,000. In 1 year, we spent $150,000, but in not even in it. By the time we end this year, there will probably be $3.5 million spent in legal fees. What for? He has 2 law firms. What for? You know, so I mean, I appreciate his question, because we feel that way. We feel that we'll be in a situation where in HB 70, part of this clause is that they give your buildings away. So what happens when we don't have the money to operate those buildings? Well, they may give it to another adjacent school district or another for-profit organization that will use taxpayer dollars to gain profit and not put any of that money back into the community. So yeah, it's twofold. I mean, it's top-heavy spending so we're busted and don't have any monies, and two, a way to definitely put our district up for sale when we can't afford to maintain it anymore.
I would like to also draw our attention to the past and some of the superintendents here and public school advocates who've been around for years can remember the rhetoric during the DeRoff case that there's too much top spending from administration. They're wasting the money. We can't put more money into the DeRoff case and into public schools because of the administrative costs. Now, overlay what we have as a historical, as a fact pattern right now. That's why I'm saying follow the money. If you can't get the public records requests from ODE or anybody else, that's what legislators are good for. We can park with our sleeping bags outside the door until we get it. And so that is our case. Because they can't talk out of both sides of their mouth. 30 years ago, we couldn't fund public education because of too much administrative costs. Look what we have now, a runaway train. If the superintendents in this room did this, they would be hung upside down with their toenails. But this system, by ODE and legislators are saying that this is all okay now as state takeover. So I really feel we need to put all of these facts that you're putting together for Youngstown, East Cleveland, Lorraine, and when you overlay all of this, it's a clear case that this needs to be stopped. Because our school system, no matter what they want at the end of the day, isn't going to be able to function, and our children are not going to be able to learn. And the business people need to be brought into this narrative. The business roundtable, the Chamber of Commerce, they need to see the crisis. So it can be presented the next time to them. And we can organize that fact, because I'm sure they would be horrified by what you just said here. I'm very concerned about teachers leaving, and you've had experienced teachers who are dedicated.
Yes.
They are not going to put up with this. So we have a teacher crisis that's being created by design. Are we gonna have all Teach America students who just feel like they have a heart for teaching? I'm sorry. There's a reason why doctors go through professional training. Teachers do too. We know what we're doing. We need to equip them to do their job. And that's the exact opposite of what I've just heard from your experience. So thank you. And just keep following the money, lay out what they're wasting, and then the goal is for the school board, which was kicked out of your power, to put on the levy for the voters to have enough confidence in your school district to pass that levy, to continue that fact pattern. So really, this is chaos. It's total chaos. And so I just want to thank you for being on the tip of the spear. And I believe you're going to lead us out of this by all of the facts that you just given.
Thank you.
Kind of leads me into, she kind of teed up my very next question. My very next question to you all is, public school districts serve as a key contributor to the economic development of the community by providing key workforce development support. What is your perception of economic impact and feedback from the business community in your district?
Well, as we know that our communities don't go, our school districts don't go. Families aren't moving into our communities, businesses aren't thriving, new businesses aren't coming in. The economic impact, and again, I'm going to regress back to what Mr. Shad said a minute ago, is Lorraine's in the same situation. We have a renewal levy, which in our community, knock on wood, is just about an automatic pass because the folks in our community are very supportive and they understand what that money goes to and what we need it for. It's no new money, it's a renewal. And this situation and the CEO has put us in a position to where we won't even discuss the levy because of the irresponsible spending, because of the lack of local control. And when you look at that, you put your district at a great disadvantage when we know that we need that renewal levy money. You know, we passed a levy a few years back for the first time in almost 21 years, which is very difficult to do in this current climate. So when you have a situation like House Bill 70 and the damage that is done and the destruction to not just your school district but your entire community, yeah, it has an impact on the economic development of our communities because we're losing teachers. You know, some of these teachers live in our community, their kids go to our school buildings, and they're fleeing. I wouldn't stick around either. And to be honest with you, I'm at a point where I don't know what to tell them. You know, I'm not one to lie to them. I'm not going to tell them, hey, it's gonna be okay, you know, just you know, and for a long time, just hang in there. It's gonna be right, we're gonna fix this thing. But, you know, as time goes on and you keep seeing what's happening, you know, I'm not sure that the timeline is gonna match up to with what this school district needs to do in keeping these folks here. And when you look at Lorraine City Schools, which is probably the second or third largest employer in Lorraine, maybe second largest employer in Lorraine, and you start losing folks and you start replacing them with unqualified Teach for America people, that becomes a problem because those folks aren't living in our community, they're not spending dollars in our local businesses, they're not eating in our community. You know, they come and, just like our CEO, he won't move into our city and won't bring his kids to our school district because it is unsafe in our school district. The very guy that made it unsafe is scared to bring his kids to our school district. So he bought a house in a community that is, you know, 25 minutes away in Cuyahoga County, not even living in our county, which, you know, I don't expect our CEO or superintendent to live in our city, but support our community, and he doesn't do that. And this is a trend that we're seeing. And so the overall impact that it's going to have on our community, absolutely. You know, our whole community is going to lose that revenue and our businesses, and you know, it's just devastating for everybody involved.
Thank you. I won't share a great deal of information because everything that he has said, ditto. But you heard my previous comments about teachers leaving, about families leaving. Quite naturally, businesses are leaving as well. That's one of the major things. And East Cleveland, for those of you who don't know, is one of the poorest communities in the state of Ohio. So therefore, this one item is just like a seesaw. You know, we were up and now we're down. We can't move one way or the other than going further down, rather. Simply because of House Bill 70. It's devastating to the community, economically and stability-wise as well. Our community is becoming far more unstable simply because of the fact that House Bill 70 is coming, and people are still not sure of what's happening. But I do want to share just one other thing with you about the ABC. When it was first appointed, there were several of us who went to the meetings and we shared with the ABC, why don't you roll up your sleeves with us and not be this superpower above us, and let's work together. Can you imagine how powerful that could have been? That could have brought far more stability. It could have done a lot of things. I don't want to totally speculate, but it could have been a whole different scenario. For those of us who were on the board, for those of us that were in the community, we tried to talk to the ABC, come and be a part with us. Let's work together on this thing. Let's show a whole different model to the state and show what can be done. No. What they did was, the second meeting of the ABC, they took it out of East Cleveland and took it 12 miles away at the Cuyahoga Community College, where many of our residents could not get there, who wanted to be there. See, the first meeting, the auditorium was stacked. It was standing room only. So therefore, do you think they wanted to do business with that in that type of climate? No. So they took it 12 miles away at Cuyahoga Community College, and that's where they stayed the second meeting. However, what we did was just like the old, in the 60s, because you have some 60s area people. We got on the telephone and was calling. We called people, we got together, carpooled, and went down there, and we would not move until we were allowed to come into that meeting to hear what was going on. And they tried to go into executive session for 3 hours, but we won't even go there. Just to show you the climate of people, I just don't understand the state of Ohio. It's almost just like you're saying, well, we could care less who you are and what you are. We're gonna roll our program out and that is it. But the problem with that is this. You know, for adults, we're gonna eventually get ourselves together, do whatever. But it's the children.
That's right. Yes. That's
It is
right.
the children.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just heard something that just broke my heart just 2 days ago. Now, I won't even go into the fact that, I won't, there's a lot of things I just won't even go into, but their children are fighting, more fighting than ever before.
Yes.
I just heard this.
Yes.
Why do you think that is? If there's anxiety in the home, the kids become more anxious. And if they're more anxious, they're already going through puberty and those kinds of things. So therefore, what is gonna happen? You're gonna have more violence. That's the last thing we need in East Cleveland. Seriously, anywhere. You want your children to learn and work together, to grow together, to achieve together. House Bill 70, it is the worst, it is a scourge on the Americans' fabric totally, not just in our few communities, across the whole entire state and across our nation. Thank you.
I just wanted to say this, is that we can't forget how HB 70 was built or designed. It was 84 secret meetings, and our chamber was involved with that meeting. Our chamber president, Tom Humphreys, yeah, he was involved in that. Jim Tressel was involved in that. Bishop Murray of the Catholic Diocese in our area was involved with that. 84 secret meetings that developed this bill, and no inclusion of anyone who actually lived in the city. You know, but this was what this plan had happened. Our business community pretty much thought that this was a plan that would work, and they worked in tandem with these other people behind our backs, behind our city's back, to have these 84 meetings that they did to devise this. And afterwards, there was a grant that was given for the chamber to get involved in our school district to have our children have mentor experiences. That grant was not really fulfilled in the way it should have been. And we have a chamber of almost 3,500 members, and we couldn't even have enough experiences for 100 kids to get involved in the business community. So that, I think at the heart is we have to realize that the people that should be at the table doing good on behalf of our districts, they're plotting behind our backs to make something that they feel is best for them and not best for our community.
So, my next question.
I was just thinking, Dr. Rice, that the most devastating thing about what is happening is the children. We can't get back that time that this is impacting them. We saw our children in East Cleveland coming to our meetings. They are very confused and chaotic and not understanding what's going on and frightened. And they can't regroup that time, nor the education that's taking place or not taking place because of the fears and the chaos and all of the change and whatever. And so I feel for our children, you know, what will be the impact ultimately for them that they've lost. You know.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to add to that, in our district, this is what our children had lost. We lost our STEM programming in one of our high schools. We had a VPA in STEM program. Our CEO, we had also discovery schools that were STEM programs for children, 3rd grade to 8th. He said that all schools should have STEM, so he eliminated the programs, but he didn't replace them with anything. So that was part of the issue that happened. And our VPA in STEM high school, Cheney, they had received a award from Apple for iPads for all the students. So we were on the right track. We were making the changes, and then you dismantle the program. We have our Youngstown Early College, it's called Rand Early College now, where that school has been in the top Newsweek's top 500 high schools 2 years in a row, and it has received other accolades. And that program has constantly been under attack. And it's doing great work, but it's been constantly under attack. We lost our music programs. We don't have robust music programs in our elementary schools anymore. There's been a reduction in foreign language in our schools. As far as our Spanish classes, they moved from having teachers to having the students use Rosetta Stone and other programs of that sort. There's been
3rd grade reading.
yeah, our 3rd grade reading. Before the CEO was in charge, we had a B. Now we have a D in a program that that we were making strides, real strides in that program. And now that was something that was removed because you removed elements that supported students, like our Ohio State Literacy program that was intact, our AmeriCorps program where we had people come in and work with the students extra and that sort of thing. So there are tangible things that our district.
I'm just gonna pull it back because I've been eliminated down to about 2 minutes. And I gotta get to the next question. But as a board privilege, one of my board members had a question.
I just want to say, when I became a board member, I'm new. And I came on that board, I thought I was in Alice in Wonderland. That's how new I was. And I thought, well, here it is. If I want a vote for the kids, all I had to say, I'm for the children, vote yes. If there's something I didn't want for the children, vote no. And all of a sudden they said, choop, 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 you better get real. And I found out that the transparency from our CEO was financial fog, and that's what I was running around with. What I did not understand, and I still don't, if you send all that education, why is it that no one decided that I'm going to work with the community, I'm going to work with the Board of Education? I don't care what the state said, because I'm gonna do this for the children. And none of the CEOs from Youngstown, from Cleveland, anything said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be very frugal with the money. I'm gonna help and raise them up, and none of that happened. And it was as if they all talked together and decided that they were gonna put on another layer of administrative, non-usable administrative type of, I don't know, people that intimidated the teachers and made the teachers, instead of feeling better and positive about themselves, made them feel instead of very negative. And that we start losing teachers. We start getting fear in the classroom. I had never heard of that. I was such a happy camper going to school. I had perfect attendance from 7th to 12th grade, so they had to beat this into my mind. When I sat on the board, I couldn't understand that. Mr. Demacio had to take me down to Youngstown and make me sit with them so I could understand, and then I still didn't get all of it. It was like I was in a different land. I did not understand how somebody could be so devious and just wreck education, because that was a hallmark to get us all where we wanted to go. So I
I know I'm out of time, but I do want to at least pose this next question. And because it's going to help our ADC members who are here as well. My next question is, common denominators for all three ADCs identified districts is that they are urban students who need additional supports, serve high percentage of special educational students, and have pockets of poverty and high social, emotional needs. Do you all believe that the ADC board fully understands the makeup of these districts, and have these ADCs address these issues with the community? And with that, I'm going to allow you guys are a little short, but we do have some ADC members here who are familiar with their other members, and if you guys have any insight or input to that, please share. I think there's a mic right to your left.
I'm Steve Coughlin. I've been on the ADC since the summer of 17, I believe. And I'm also a teacher in the district, so I've always said it's like being dropped in the middle of a tornado. I was put on the commission as the second appointee. There was a person before me, and I also, just to clarify, I voted no in terms of hiring Mr. Hardy. Due to the fact, and I didn't really know David at the time at all, my issue was the process in which he was brought in. I felt that it was hijacked, and that was the term that I used in my first ever comment and meeting, because I felt that it was just a process that was just unethical in terms of how it was done, because there were candidates, including our superintendent at the time, Jeff Graham, who has been mentioned, had the qualifications that exuded those. But as far as the question of do the other members, I guess that you are asking, the problem that I have, and this is just my take, and I can say, and Diane can say the same thing. Not only have we both worked in the district, but we sent our kids to the district, okay? My daughter is a graduate of Lorraine High School. She graduated in 2013. I'm very proud of that. I've said this a few times, so if you've heard it before, I apologize. She works in Columbus, financial planner. And in her office at Merrill Lynch, one of the things that they joke with, you have Lorraine grit, okay? And one of our chair has used that hashtag in some of his tweets recently, but I'm proud that she went to Lorraine High School. She's proud that she went to Lorraine High School, and she took advantage of all the opportunities that we've had in Lorraine. So Diane and I both identify not only with the school system, because we've worked there, we sent our kids there. I can't say the same for the other academic distress commission members. Part of the process being flawed immeasurably, and you've heard everything that we're hearing here is it makes your head want to explode. But the chairperson that was appointed by Paula DeMaria is from Columbus. I'm sorry, but the insanity of that right there tells you all you need to know. There were candidates locally, people that said, I would want to do this when Tony Richardson stepped down and we needed a chair. We had candidates locally that people said, hey, then Paula picked someone from Columbus. And nothing against Randall Sampson. I didn't know Randall Sampson at all, but he lives in Columbus. How can you come to Lorraine and identify with the community and know where, you know, the local pizza place is, what the international does? I mean, you're learning about the community. How can you make decisions that are going to be critical for the community? You have the other two members, one of them from Toledo, and one of them is somewhat local, but I don't know where their informational track comes from, as it comes simply from the CEO. You know, Diane and I have done walkthroughs with board members. We walk through buildings, we've talked to people. Obviously, I work there, so I hear it every day. Diane, you know, we've joked about, like, our lives have been taken over by this. because of so many people reaching out to us is like, please try to save us. They're desperate. This situation is beyond toxic. It's we declared a state of emergency at a board meeting about a month ago because this situation is so dire in Lorraine. So I could talk for a week on this, and everything that they've said, ditto, as you said, it's absolutely true, and it's troubling. And I guess and I don't know if I'll have a chance to talk, please, the legislators, we need your help. And I've talked with all of you about that, and you know our feelings. The governor, we need your help. We need anybody that can assist us in getting out of this mess. And we can't wait until next year, 2 years. It has to happen like months ago, but it has to happen now.
I want to address President Ballard's questions about, I believe, with the other commissioners, I believe that there is a significant disconnect from really understanding the Lorraine community, what the children need. Our children are not test scores. Our children, first and foremost, we must address the social and emotional needs of our kids. They cannot come to school and learn and be effective in their education unless we address the social and emotional needs first and the whole child. Wraparound services, social workers, quality alternative education programs needs to be a priority for Lorraine City Schools. And with the current administration and what I've seen go on, that's not a priority. It's not a priority. Even curriculum has not been a priority. And when I came on board early January, to find out that this ADC was meeting quarterly with all of the distraught parents in the community, the distraught teachers, I'm thinking it's in turmoil. And then we took a lot of time. I surveyed the teachers, 337 teachers completed the survey that I created. And Steve and I did 4 LEA listening sessions just to give the teachers a forum in which they knew that they could come in and talk to us honestly about what was going on in the schools. And I just could not believe what I heard and what I learned. I came into this, I was willing to help. I've been gone from Lorraine for 5 years now. I spent 14 years in the district, 7 years teaching and 7 years as a high school principal. And 3 children through the district, and my kids have phenomenal education. I'm gonna brag about my daughter. She's at Neomed. She's gonna be a pharmacy doctor. She got her education from Lorraine City Schools, and I couldn't be a prouder parent. On top of being the principal there, it was a part of our lives for many years. And the turmoil that's gone on in the district, I just hope that there is a quick, even going into next year, we cannot go into next year and think that we're going to survive this. So to the legislatures, to the government, to Columbus, we need help now. We are in a state of emergency and we need help now. And it needs to happen before the start of the next school year.
I will yield the floor back to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. See me after class. We continue to need some additional assistance, Mr. President. Let's give our panelists a nice round of applause.